Ask yourself a question you have never once asked out loud. Why were you born? Not biologically, you know how bodies work. I'm asking the other question, the one that has an answer somewhere in someone's head that nobody has ever told you. What was missing in their life that you were made to fill? Because something was. Nobody has ever created a human being for that human being's sake. They couldn't. You didn't exist yet. You had no preferences, no interests, no vote. There was no you to consider. Every single reason you are alive right now was a reason about somebody else, their fear, their emptiness, their marriage, their parents, their timeline, their idea of what a complete life looks like. You were not the goal. You were the solution. And here's the sentence this entire video exists to say to your face. They didn't love you. They needed you. And then, if you were lucky, love came afterward, on top of a transaction you never agreed to. Not to be born is best. Sophocles wrote that 2,500 years ago in a play performed in front of thousands of people who had all been born and were all going to die. Nobody has ever improved on it, and almost nobody has the stomach to sit with it for longer than 4 seconds. This video is going to be uncomfortable, not because it's cruel, because it's accurate, and accuracy is the one thing nobody prepared you for on this subject. Let's name the actual reasons, not the ones people say at baby showers, the real ones. Fear of dying alone. This is the big one, and nobody admits it. People look at the end of their life, see an empty room, and manufacture a person who will be obligated to be in it. That's not love, that's insurance with a heartbeat. A marriage that was failing, the oldest one there is. 2 people running out of reasons to stay in the same house decide to create a third person who cannot leave. A child is glue. A child as a shared project to avoid a shared silence. And when it doesn't work, because it never works, that child grows up in a house with a war in it and spends 30 years wondering what they did wrong. Nothing. You were a repair attempt on something that was already broken. Social pressure. Their mother asked when. Their friends were all doing it. The question came at every dinner until it was easier to have a child than to keep answering. An entire human life created because 2 adults couldn't tolerate a conversation. A retirement plan with a face. Say it plainly, because in most of the world it's not even hidden. It's the explicit arrangement. Who will take care of me when I'm old? Who will pay? Who will visit? A child is created as a future caregiver and then told their whole life that this is love. Emptiness. A life that felt like nothing. No purpose, no direction, and then a discovery. If you create a person who needs you completely, you never have to answer the question of what you're for. A baby erases the void by filling every hour of your day. It's the most socially celebrated way to avoid your own existence. A second chance. They failed at something. Their own childhood was a wreck, their dreams didn't happen, they became someone they didn't plan on. So they made a fresh copy, someone to do it right this time. You weren't born a person, you were born a revision. Proof that they mattered, proof that something of them continues, a monument that walks and talks and calls them on their birthday. Look at that list. Every single item is a need. Not one of them is about the child, because the child doesn't exist yet to be about. They gave you life so that they wouldn't be alone in it. And here's the part that turns the knife slowly. Those needs didn't stop when you were born. They kept running every day of your childhood. That need was operating in the background, and you could feel it even when you had no words for it. Every child can. You just called it family. Now the floor underneath all of it. You were brought into a life with a guaranteed ending, guaranteed loss, guaranteed pain, guaranteed sickness, and guaranteed death, and nobody asked you. Not asked you and you agreed, not asked you and you said yes. It was structurally impossible to ask. You cannot consent to existing because consent requires an existing person to give it. So every human being who has ever lived was placed into a situation of unlimited risk with no permission, no negotiation, no opt-out that isn't a horror. Think about what we require consent for. Surgery, a contract, someone touching your arm. We built entire legal systems around the idea that you cannot do something to a person without asking. And then the single largest thing that will ever happen to any human being, being thrown into existence, mortality, and suffering, is the one thing nobody has to ask about at all. That's not an accident. It's because there's no one there to ask. And instead of treating that as a problem, we treated it as permission. Here's the asymmetry that David Benatar built an entire philosophy on, and it's the most quietly devastating idea in modern ethics. If you don't create a person, the good things they miss out on harm no one. There's nobody there to be deprived. But if you create them, every bad thing that happens to them is real, and it happens to someone. Non-existence has no victim. Existence always does. Read that twice, because you can't unread it. Now let's talk about what actually determined your life. Not your effort, not your character, not your choices. The lottery. 2 children are born on the same day, same hour. One lands in a house with money, food, heat, books, 2 functioning adults in a country where the water is safe. The other lands into hunger or a war or a house with a violent man in it or a body with something wrong with it from the first breath. What did either of them do to earn their situation? Nothing. 0. There is no ledger where they were graded before arrival. One child gets tutors and orthodontics and a passport that opens doors. The other gets a childhood that is mostly about surviving until tomorrow. And we look at these 2 outcomes and say, life is what you make of it, as if the deck weren't already dealt before either of them could speak. And every parent who chooses to have a child is buying a lottery ticket with someone else's life. That's the part nobody says. When you gamble, you risk your own money. When you create a person, you gamble with an entire existence, one that will feel every consequence of the role, and you keep whatever prize comes of it. The company, the meaning, the hand to hold when you're old. The child absorbs all the risk. The parent collects the reward. They rolled the dice, you lived the number. There are children starving right now who did nothing to deserve their coordinates. They didn't fail, they didn't choose badly, they were simply placed there by 2 people who wanted something and never asked whether the world they were dropping them into was worth being dropped into. And if you were one of the lucky rolls, then you were the rare case where the gamble happened to pay off. And you should be honest that "it worked out for me" is not the same as "it was right to gamble." So let's be direct about who's making these decisions. Most people are not equipped to do this. Not financially, not emotionally, not mentally. And they do it anyway. They do it while broke, and then the child grows up watching the arguments about money, learning at 6 years old that existing costs something and they are the cost. They do it while unhealed, carrying every wound their own parents gave them, unexamined, and then handing those wounds down like a family heirloom nobody wanted. They do it while their own life is chaos because they believe, genuinely believe, that a baby will fix it. It doesn't. It never has. It just adds a witness. You need a license to drive a car. You need a certification to cut someone's hair. You need to pass an inspection to run a food stall. To create a conscious being who will suffer for 80 years and then die, you need nothing. No test, no proof, no readiness of any kind. It is the only thing in human life with infinite consequences and 0 requirements. And so the cycle runs. Birth, struggle, damage, and then that damaged person at 28, alone and afraid, decides what they need as a child and does the exact thing that was done to them for the exact same reasons and calls it love. Birth, misery, death. And then before the misery is even finished, the next one is already ordered. To bear children into this world is like carrying wood to a burning house. Zapffe wrote that. And the terrible thing about the sentence is how calm it is. Not angry, just describing what people do every day in every country, with celebration and confetti and a gender reveal. Nobody stops to check whether the house is on fire. Everybody's too busy carrying wood. And it isn't only your parents. Widen the lens, because something bigger was waiting for you too. You were born into a system that needed you before it ever met you. Governments panic when birth rates fall. Have you ever asked why? Not because they love children. Because pension systems, tax bases, and economies are built on a simple requirement. More people must keep arriving to pay for the people already here. Your retirement is funded by workers who don't exist yet. That's the design. And the design that requires a permanent supply of new entrants to pay the previous ones has a name everyone recognizes in every other context. So you were born into a role before you were born into a family. Taxpayer, consumer, labor, someone's future customer. From your first breath, there were systems that had already assigned you a function, and they were counting on your parents' loneliness to keep the supply coming. That's why the pressure exists. That's why every culture wraps having children in duty, honor, legacy, and God. Not because anyone examined whether it's right, because societies that stopped producing people stopped existing. So every society that survived is one that made having children feel mandatory. You are inside a machine that's selected for its own continuation, and the machine's most effective tool is a mother-in-law asking when. And more people means more of everything. More competition, more traffic on the same roads, more applicants for the same job, more weight on the same water, the same food, the same shrinking room. Every person added is another claimant on a finite thing, and yet the answer to every problem is somehow always more. You were not a miracle. You were a unit in a supply chain, and someone was very glad you arrived. Now back to the house you grew up in, because you weren't just born, you were hired. Nobody told you, there was no contract, no interview, no salary, but the job description was there from the beginning, and you've been performing it your entire life. Be the reason they stayed together. Be the achievement they can announce at family functions. Be the redemption of their failures. Be the proof their life meant something. Be the one who calls. Be the one who succeeds enough to justify what it cost them. Be the caregiver when the time comes. Be the answer to what was my life for. You've been working that job since before you could walk, and here's how you know it's real. Think about what happened when you didn't do it well. Bad grades, the wrong career, the wrong partner, choosing a life they didn't design. What arrived? Not curiosity about your happiness, disappointment, coldness, that specific silence, the performance review of a person who thought they'd hired someone else. And the sentence. Every one of you has heard some version of the sentence, after everything we sacrificed for you. Stop and look at that sentence properly, because it is the single most revealing thing a parent can say. Love does not come with an invoice. Nobody who gives freely keeps a running total. That sentence is a receipt being presented, and a receipt only exists where there was a transaction. Love does not send a bill. Debt does. Let's handle the defense, because it's already forming in your chest. Yes, they sacrificed. Genuinely. Sleep, money, freedom, their bodies, their 20s, their ambitions, entire versions of themselves that never got to happen. That's all real, and I'm not taking it from them. But sacrifice for a situation they created. You didn't appear and start making demands. You didn't run up a bill and skip town. They chose to bring a person into existence. A person who arrived with needs attached, because that's what people are, and then presented the cost of that choice to the one party in the entire arrangement who never agreed to it. Here's the test. Imagine someone brings you to a restaurant you never asked to go to, in a city you didn't choose, orders for you, and then hands you the bill and looks hurt when you don't thank them enough. Now imagine they do it every year for 30 years. That's it. That's the structure. And I want to be precise, because this is where people misunderstand. This doesn't make your parents monsters, it makes them human beings who did the normal thing for normal reasons. But normal isn't the same as for you. And gratitude that is demanded isn't gratitude, it's payment on a debt you never took out, collected by someone who's convinced the debt is love. There's a listener I keep thinking about, a man with a wife and 3 kids doing the numbers out loud. 120 on lunch, another 120 on things nobody needed, 60 on drinks, 60 for half a tank of gas, adding it up and admitting the thing you're not supposed to admit. Sometimes I wish I was a single man. Not because he's cruel, because he's honest. Because that money was his, earned by his hours, his back, his years, and it now belongs to a life he chose before he understood what he was choosing. And that man's children will feel it. They always feel it. Not in words, in the tightness of the table, in the sigh when they ask for something, in the arithmetic that runs behind their father's eyes. They will grow up knowing somewhere under language that their existence has a cost and someone is paying it. It's not selfishness to say that out loud. It's the first honest thing anyone said out loud about it in decades. Before we go to the last part, I want to know who I'm talking to, and I want you to answer honestly, because this comment section is going to be the most useful thing under this video. Put your age. Then tell me, do you have children? How many? Or are you child-free? That's it, 2 pieces of information. And if you want to say more, say the real thing. If you have them, tell me whether anyone ever asked you why before you did it. If you're child-free, tell me what people say to you at family dinners. If you're young and deciding, say that too. Because everyone has an opinion about this, and almost nobody has ever said theirs out loud without being shouted down. This is one of the few places on the internet where you can. Scroll the replies afterward. It'll tell you more about human beings than any video will. There's a question that gets called selfish, cold, depressing, and immature, usually by people who've never sat with it for more than a second. Why would I bring children into a world I hate that I am forced to exist in? Answer it seriously instead of dismissing it. What exactly is the argument against it? You look around at what's actually here. Work that consumes the only decades you get, a planet whose numbers get worse every year, wars that never end, just rotate, a cost of living that has outrun a normal life, loneliness at levels never recorded before, everyone medicated, exhausted, scrolling, and a guaranteed ending for every single person, no exceptions. And the response to someone who looks at all of that and says, I don't think I should create a person to experience it, the response is that they're being selfish? Turn it around. Which is the selfish act? Declining to create a person who will suffer, or creating one because you're afraid of an empty house? One of those decisions has a victim. The other one doesn't have anybody in it at all. I do not forgive myself for being born, Cioran wrote that. He wasn't performing. He lived to 84 thinking about it and never found a counter-argument that satisfied him. Neither has anyone else. The pro-birth position has never been an argument. It's an assumption so old and so total that it's never been asked to defend itself. Now the turn. And this is the part that hurts most, because it removes the villain. Your parents probably don't know they did this. Most of them genuinely believe it was love. They'd say it under oath. And in their experience, it was love, because nobody ever showed them the difference between loving a person and needing one. Nobody explained that "I can't imagine my life without you" is a sentence about the speaker. And they learned it from their parents, who learned it from theirs, who learned it from theirs, a chain of unconsented use running backward until it disappears into prehistory. Every link a victim of the previous link, every link certain it was doing the right thing. Nobody in the entire chain stopping to check. That's why this can't be about hatred. Hatred requires a villain, and there isn't one. There's just a very old machine that runs on human loneliness and has never once been switched off for inspection. But understanding it changes something permanent. Their disappointment in you was never a verdict on your worth. It was a performance review for a job you never applied to. Every time you felt you'd failed them, you'd only failed to fill a hole that existed before you were born and was never yours to fill. You cannot fail at being someone's cure. Nobody can. That's why the disappointment never ended no matter what you achieved, because the hole wasn't about you, and nothing you did could ever reach it. So, here's where you actually stand. You were made to solve a problem you didn't cause. You were hired without an interview into a job you couldn't refuse. You've spent your entire life auditioning for people who weren't grading your worth. They were checking whether you filled the space. And you can stop, right now. Not by hating them, not by cutting them off unless that's what your specific situation requires, by quitting the audition. Because here's what opens up the moment you see it. You own nothing you never agreed to. Not the career they wanted, not the life they designed, not the grandchildren they're waiting on so they can run the same program again. None of it was ever a debt. It was a bill you were handed for a meal you never ordered, and you're allowed to put it down. And here's the strange part, the part that surprises people. It doesn't make you love them less. It makes it possible to love them at all. Because everything you gave under obligation was payment, and payment isn't love. It's compliance wearing love's clothes. Only what you give freely counts, and you can only give freely once you know you weren't obligated. Call them if you want to call them, show up if you want to show up, but do it because you chose it this morning as an adult, not because a debt was installed in you before you could speak. You were not made to complete somebody. You were not created to be anyone's cure, anyone's proof, anyone's insurance against an empty room. You were used. And the day you understand that is the first day of your life that actually belongs to you. If you made it this far, you already know this channel isn't built for comfort. It's for people willing to look at hard things without needing them softened first. And if this one got under your skin, if it named something you've thought quietly for years and never said out loud, there's one thing you can do that costs nothing. YouTube gives smaller channels a feature called hype. It's not a like and it's not a comment, it's a separate button, and every viewer gets a few each week to spend on channels they think deserve to be found. On a channel this size, it counts for far more than it would on a large one. That's built into how it works on purpose, so smaller voices get discovered instead of buried. If this said something worth more people hearing, that's the one action that actually moves it. Everything else, sharing it, sitting with it, the fact that you stayed for the whole thing instead of clicking away the moment it got uncomfortable, that's already more than most people are willing to give a question like this. And don't forget the comment, your age and whether you have children. I read them. Thank you for staying long enough to think about it instead of just feeling it and moving on. This is Eternal Rift.